Chapter 5, Groundwater, Lesson 3, Confined and Unconfined Aquifers.
Aquifer is a body of rock or sediments that holds groundwater, which is described as the precipitation that has infiltrated the soil beyond the surface and collected in empty spaces underground. Many different types of sediments and rocks can form aquifers, including gravel, sandstone, conglomerates, and fractured limestone. Aquifers are sometimes categorized according to the rock type or sediments of which they are composed. Many different types of sediments and rocks can form aquifers, including gravel, sandstone, conglomerates, and fractured limestones. Aquifers are sometimes categorized according to the type of rocks or sediments of which they are composed. A common misconception about aquifers is that they are underground rivers or lakes. While groundwater can seep into or out of the aquifers due to the porous nature, it cannot move fast enough to flow like a river. The rate at which underground moves through an aquifer varies depending on the rock's permeability. Much of the water we use for domestic, industrial, or agricultural purposes is groundwater. Most groundwater, including a significant amount of drinking water, becomes from comes from aquifers. In order to access this water, a well must be created by drilling a hole that reaches the aquifer. While wells are man-made points of discharge for aquifers, they also discharge naturally at springs and in wetlands. Groundwater can become depleted if you use it at a faster rate than it can replenish itself. The replenishment of aquifers by precipitation is called recharging. Depletion of aquifers has increased primarily due to expanding agricultural irrigation. Groundwater can become contaminated when an excessive amount of pesticides and herbicides are sprayed on agricultural fields, septic tanks leak, or landfills are improperly lined or managed, and toxic materials seep through the soil into the aquifer. Aquifers naturally filter groundwater by forcing it to pass through small pores in between sediments, which helps to remove substances from water. This natural filtration process, however, may not be enough to remove all the contaminants. There are two types of aquifers. The first one is confined aquifer. It is an aquifer below the land surface that is saturated with water. Layers of both permeable material are both above and below the aquifer, causing it to be under pressure so that when aquifer is penetrated by a well, the water will rise above the top of the aquifer. It is where thick deposits overlie the aquifer and confine it from the Earth's surface or rocks. Permeable rocks units that are usually deeper under the ground than unconfined aquifers. They are obtained by relatively impermeable rock or clay that limits groundwater movement into or out of the confined aquifer. Confined aquifer may be replenished or recharged by rain or stream water after infiltrating the rock at some considerable distance away from the confined aquifer. Groundwater in this aquifer can sometimes be thousands of years old. The next one is unconfined aquifer. It is an aquifer whose upper water surface, or so-called water table, is at atmospheric pressure, and thus is able to rise and fall. It is where the rock is directly open at the surface of the ground, and groundwater is directly recharged, for example, by rainfall or snowmelt. Unconfined aquifer in is the upper groundwater surface, and unconfined aquifer is called water table. The depth of the water table varies according to factors such as topography, geology, season, and tidal effects, and the quantities of water being pumped from the aquifer. Typical examples of unconfined aquifers including many areas of coastal sands and alluvial deposits in river valleys. In this image, we can see the difference between unconfined aquifer and a confined aquifer.